back to Simply His. Today we are going to be continuing our discussion with Jamie Woodle and Kendra Hann. If you missed last week, please go back and watch it. They were powerful testimonies that you're not going to want to miss. So Jamie, can you kind of tell us what Return to Eden even is?
Yes. Return to Eden is an informative and yet fun public health show that we do in connection to Eden's Essentials.
Right.
And our hope is to make some sense of the health news coming out. There's so much misinformation out there.
There is.
A lot of overemphasis on weak science. And so our purpose is to really provide our viewers information that is from evidence-based information so that they can use that knowledge to apply to their own lives and work on their own health journey. And a lot of people are looking now for more holistic, herbal things instead of relying on big pharma and pharmaceuticals. They're looking more towards nutraceuticals to address some of their health concerns. And that's what we have the pleasure of bringing to the table, myself and my co-host, Kendra.
Well, we're so glad that you guys are here and are both doing this. I know that Return to Eden, Joe, had kind of come out of your passion for health and what you went through and everything like that, and how we've kind of come out of big pharma to learn stuff and the supplements and everything like that with what you wanted to see happen with Return to Eden. So why did you put these beautiful ladies in charge of this?
Well, for those that have followed Return to Eden since its inception about 3 years ago, they've probably noticed that it's undergone a series of changes with the host. And all good hosts, but for different reasons, got so buried in other ministry aspects of, like, let's say, Skywatch TV administration, that they come to me and they said, we can keep hosting for you the Return to Eden program, or I can do this other administrative work. And I'm looking at the unsustainability of not having the administrative parts of Skywatch, which is a separate entity, by the way. But we've got a lot of employees that volunteer to do work at Whispering Ponies Ranch, for example, our charitable ranch where children come for refuge and reprieve from the foster care system, etc. And so there's some overlap.
Yes, there's a lot
talented people. Overlap. You see a talented person, let's say like Charisse Parton, for example, that people see on Simply His.
Yes.
Like, she's a great host.
Yeah.
She can't do Simply His and administrate parts of Skywatch and also be the host of Return to Eden. So that was pretty early on. There was one host before that who's not with the ministry. She was actually the second one. Then the third incarnation of this effort became Allie Anderson, who was trying to work as a child advocate and also host Return to Eden. And her passions are such with child advocacy that she also couldn't do both.
Right.
And so for a while, we just tabled it for about a year.
Yes, we did.
We've had questions too, like, well, Joe, why don't you just host it? And I would just answer the same thing. It's a huge area of passion for me. Right. I love to see people find freedom from their disease, their dis-ease. For people that have followed my ministerial career, they're not unfamiliar at all with my testimony of more than 20 years through multiple autoimmune dysfunctions and issues with my prostate and my digestion and my memory and my energy and everything else, having no idea, as doctors would blame this on genetics and, that kind of thing.
They like to do that.
That there was this alternative path, naturopathic medicine, herbalism, homeopathy. There's all kinds of stuff. If you've been through the Western medicine pharmaceutical train, and you've done the CT scans and the MRIs and all of that stuff for decades and decades, and you feel like you've seen it all and done everything, you've seen every specialist, you'll probably find what I once did, and that is you actually haven't even started. Now, wait a minute, what? How can that be true? I've seen everyone and done all the tests and seen all the experts, and I could tell you, you may not have even started your actual wellness journey, which isn't meant to devastate you, it's meant to give you hope. And long story short, I can't host the Return to Eden program, even though my heart is with you ladies, because of my responsibilities at Whispering Ponies Ranch, the therapeutic work we're doing. I'm also a child advocate and very busy with Skywatch Television. Yep. It's one of the reasons we tabled a forthcoming podcast that we were planning to do this year called Defender Insiders.
Right.
When we launched the idea, Tom Horn, my father, was still alive.
Yeah.
And it was just different. By the time it came time for the reveal, I'm looking at another distraction from Skywatch Television, and I'm praying about it, and I just don't feel that I can prioritize another thing and do my best at Skywatch TV. And until I'm released from that, I keep it a major priority in my life. So along comes Jamie Woodle, and Kendra Hann, and they're working at Eden's Essentials.
Yeah.
And it is discovered that they have massive talent that way exceeds just, some of the responsibilities there. So we thought, perhaps a fourth effort. This time, though, they've really stuck with it. You ladies have done many, many weeks of programs.
Well, and we try to direct our customers to where they can find the programs too. We've had a lot of interest even before we started the program again, with people asking when Return to Eden would come
Yes.
back. People want unbiased information that they can sort through themselves and know that they can trust that we're not trying to mislead them. We're
Right.
not buying into any particular party line. We are giving
Right.
you the science and allowing you the opportunity to move forward with that information.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to navigate, too, as you both know. Conversations like vaccine safety.
Right.
You'll find that the messaging that we're being told by our media here in the United States in particular doesn't match with what a lot of us are discerning with our own eyes in terms of the outcomes.
Yeah.
So then you go to the internet to try to research. Are these assertions about the dangers of these potential vaccines legitimate? Or is this just another, far right-wing talking point that people are using to politicize an outcome? And it is really difficult to find conclusive evidence for lots of reasons. I believe that the truth is being suppressed when there are natural
absolutely.
therapies or alternatives to pharmakeia. That information gets suppressed. A lot of our social media platforms, with the exception at the moment of X, you can almost post anything on X, which is why I believe that very soon, depending on the election outcome this year, that is going to be a platform that's either ramped up or highly attacked with efforts to shut it down or scrutinize what is permissible to speak. And the guise will be that you don't have the right, Jamie Woodle or Kendra Hann or me or my wife for that example, you don't have the right to run into a building and scream fire, putting lives at jeopardy. You don't have the right to be complicit in the spread of a transmissible disease or to present disinformation. The problem with not embracing a buyer beware market in terms of the media and the things that we're allowed to say is when you lose the First Amendment, my right to have any opinion that I want and be able to speak that opinion and then let people decide for themselves whether they agree with the assertion, hey, where's your proof? If I just go out saying it's my opinion that this does this or that, it can be classified as an opinion piece if I don't have any information to corroborate what I've said. So now you have a public that has the opportunity here in the United States, which is a free country, to decide whether they consume that bit of media hook, line, and sinker, or whether they vet it for themselves. Ultimately, I'm not responsible for how a person interprets my information. There's obviously limitations. I wouldn't run into a movie theater crying burning building and get a bunch of people to trample grandma on the way out. There are limits, but that is always the premise that's used for these efforts to try to suppress legitimate information because it might fly in the face of the people that don't want you to know that outside of their giant pharmaceutical intervention, that there is actually a much better approach to dealing with disease on all of its fronts, from malevolent cellular dysfunction to how you overcome a virus.
Right.
Or even mental health concerns. That's something that I'm deeply passionate about is, they have this whole attitude of looking at mental health issues as a character deficit or over medicating for those things when a lot of that stuff is something that can be easily remediated through cognitive behavioral therapy, nutritional changes.
Well, nutrition
Vitamin
is
E.
big.
Gut health.
Yeah.
Yeah, gut health and vitamin E is huge.
Exactly.
B12.
Drinking water, something as simple as just, hey, drink some water. That might help you feel a little bit better. Walk outside.
Right.
But we're so conditioned to want an instant fix to a problem. And I think a big part of that is because of the mainstream medical machine, I guess you could call it. And it's really just a follow the money situation. I mean, who profits?
Right.
Well, there's a lot of suppression too, like you were saying, Joe, on information that doesn't fall into what the pharmaceutical industry really wants to be out there. So you have places like big names such as Harvard who have access to this data on large groups of people, and they frequently put out studies or observations out of this data that is based on weak science. You can't take a group of people and say, well, we know that hamburgers cause diabetes or heart disease, but they leave out factors like, were they eating the bun? Were they eating the French fries?
Right.
So is
Right.
it the meat that we're supposed to be demonizing? What about all the other factors? So the biggest thing is that this data leaves out a lot of variables.
Right.
Yeah.
And then because it's coming out of Harvard, it gets publicized
And it's
and blown out of
unchallenged.
proportion.
Yeah, it's either unchallenged by the mainstream because we've been literally indoctrinated, and especially in the United States,
Oh, yeah, big
indoctrinated that your doctor is the expert on your health.
Mm-hmm.
He has the degree to tell you what it is you're going to swallow, how many times a day, what surgeries, whatevers. And it is unbelievable now because I was that guy.
Yeah.
Literally letting people cut me open and take things out of my body that I was still using.
Yeah.
Right? I was using that
Yeah.
part of colon actually, but I was supposed to get better. They're cutting out the disease, see? And I bought it only to have my problems compound immediately to much, much worse. Much worse. And yet, in this country, we really have been indoctrinated. I think some of the fallout over our most recent pandemic response has injured the pharmaceutical message and groupthink a lot.
Yeah, it's opened a lot of eyes.
A lot of eyes. You see a lot of fresh farmers markets are really thriving now. Like you said, this pushback. People are kind of figuring out now. Like we are a diseased nation, like badly diseased.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I never even heard the word Crohn's disease.
Right.
Now I want to say, and I haven't looked at this in a little while, it could be worse than this now, but a couple of years ago, it was something like 1 in less than 20 children in the United States. Don't quote me on that. But the fact that you'd have maybe 1 in every other classroom,
Well, and
statistically
even-
against when I was a kid and never even having met somebody with Crohn's.
Right.
Diabetes in children
in
that are
children.
8 years old now, type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
What in the world? And I'll just give you one example of what I mean when I say pharmaceutical companies are not interested, and I'm just saying this straight up, they are not interested in your healing. They're interested in customers.
Right.
Yes.
It's a business.
So here's my father. He's diagnosed like 15 years ago as a type 2 diabetic. 9 years into his diagnosis, at no time was diet, exercise, lifestyle ever brought up. They blamed his genetics. They, hey, Tom, some of this is just genetics. It's a game of roulette. Some people get away with no disease like this. Some it just picks them. And, unfortunately, we're going to have to put you on medications. He was on glimepiride eventually. After they had put him on metformin, they added glimepiride. And his doses were such that at about the 9-year mark, he was still losing feelings in his feet and in his fingertips. And they now tell him we're at the maximum dose of these medications.
Yeah.
You now need insulin injections. Now, this is a couple of years post my colon surgery and about the time I'm kind of writing books like Time Bomb.
Right.
And I'm starting to leave Babylon myself, right? Forgive me if you don't know the reference, Babylon, just the pharmaceutical industry. It's my nickname for it now. Or the Babylonian construct. And so he comes to me and he says, Joe, I know you've been reading a lot about diet, nutrition. Is there any chance that I could do something with my type 2 diabetes? Because it's either that or now it's insulin injections. And I don't want to go down that road. And so my good buddy, Daniel Belt, who originally helped me start Eden's Essentials years ago, and I powwowed. You would think that I'm making this up, but everybody in this room, everybody behind camera, I've got a horde of people around me, people buzzing around, they would all attest. He stopped eating bread. You would think that to get his type 2 diabetes under control, it was this massive, every day, every hour. He's regimented in his eating and is over litigating and overthinking the grocery store. Let me tell you what he did. He started taking curcumin. Just go read online. Just type in curcumin and type 2 diabetes. That alone will bring up, unless they've deleted all the articles over the last
Never know.
I print
never
those things
know.
out.
Yeah, I've started, when I find a good article, by the way, quick side note, I've started downloading the PDF.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you could
It's
go
just
back 2
gone.
months later and
it's gone.
it's a clinical trial that finally talked on behalf of nutrition, but they've deleted it.
Yeah.
Or the page is no longer found. That's not a conspiracy. That's an absolute fact.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into it. But my dad, he stops eating bread at restaurants when he goes to eat a steak or something. He starts taking curcumin and liposomal vitamin C. That's it. He goes back in a few weeks later, and his doctor said, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep doing it. Now, you notice there's no inquisitiveness.
No.
I'm not blaming this doctor. These doctors go to years and years of college. They're trained in what they know.
Yeah. They don't know what they don't know.
They don't know what they don't know,
Right.
but there's no inquisitiveness at all. Well, now, wait a minute, Tom, how did you do this? Let me write this down. As a doctor who has promised to do no harm first, I want to learn what it is. Maybe I'll do my own research. external from Pharmakeia and see if there's something to this. Let's change the culture around this. So, he just says, keep doing whatever you're doing. Within 6 months, my dad was pre-diabetic. And I can tell you that he was not like lifting weight, but not the cleanest eater, right? But those very simple things. And I guess my original point was that's a perfect example in a microcosm of a million other things that you may actually discover is reversible.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you to just do some basic digging. And so if you're watching this program and you don't remember anything else that's said, take a look at natural medicine. See if you can't find, if you're dealing with an anomalistic disease or some underlying autoimmunity or an inflammatory condition or a myalgia or a chronic pain. There is so much that you don't know is available to you that you will absolutely never hear about whatsoever. The same could be said about heart health.
Yeah.
The same could be said about Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline. These are things that you will be shocked and amazed if you talk to somebody that understands herbal medicine and the medicine that God has given us. And so in a short nutshell, that's what Return to Eden exists to do. It's a weekly program where you ladies pick out topics and you kind of go surprise the world. I think every week is a surprise the world moment.
Well, we try.
Who would have thought, right?
And that's one of the reasons why I chose to go into the career field. I wanted to be able to read the research for myself. I want to be able to know, is this good science? Is this weak science?
Right.
And I want to take from that and see, are there other studies that confirm the same thing?
Right.
And put that information out there, because I don't know why these big names like Harvard, they're taking all this weak science. There's a lot of strong science out there.
There is.
Except we do know why they're not.
No, we
using
do.
that.
We do know why.
Yeah.
One of the worst examples of weak and dated science, and we could do an hour on this. I'm just going to plant the seed, and maybe we'll do a series on Return to Eden soon. I can't think of a more prime example of the entire myth around cholesterol. There is a book, and I am not friends with these authors, so I get nothing for having plugged this book, but you could go to Amazon today. There's a book called The Great Cholesterol Myth. It's a fabulous book. Many of the naturopathic doctors that I work with or know personally, this is one of the ones they keep in their library, but it completely litigates the dated science based on some very minuscule testing with some very biased test results that go into literally everything that predicates our understanding of the bad cholesterol, LDL versus HDL, and why for your heart health and your longevity, you have to watch your cholesterol. There's a lot of naturopaths that completely scoff at this notion and talk about the viability of high cholesterol. Now, we get it confused with garbage cholesterols. We get it confused with saturated fats from, little burritos you get at the gas station that you pop in a microwave. There's absolutely a way to build plaque in your arteries. But what a lot of these naturopaths and scientists who favor a functional medicine worldview have discovered over the more recent decades, since these archaic studies, again, built the supposition that now presents everything that we think we know about cholesterol, have discovered, is that it's more about carbs and sugar intake destroying the endothelial lining of the inside of your blood vessels, your blood cells, your vascular network, that then gives rise to these almost scarred areas inside the vein that now entrap whatever bits of unhealthy fats, plaques, or even bits of metal toxicity that your body's trying to stave off or methylate or detox from, and it just packs it inside the vasculature. So then you add to that glycoproteins and what the world is now dealing with every cold and flu season when you're dealing with some of these engineered virus shapes, these protein shapes.
Good choice of words.
And it's a disaster for the cardiovascular system. Why are conditions like myocarditis through the sky? Heart attacks in
very
young people. What in the world?
So, of course, I'm a widow, and one of the things I have done through my grief journey is join several groups on Facebook and other social medias that are related to support. And one of the consistent causes of young widows like me is men who are in their early 30s to mid 40s who have had massive heart attacks, who have had strokes.
Right.
No history of heart disease, no issues. They have a few select things that they chose to have injected in common with each other. And I just think it's very interesting to look at how an entire generation of men are gone. Now, there is an entire generation of women who are now raising our children alone as a result of bad science, as a result of things that were pushed on us by the people who financially profit from those. And
Right.
I do tend to be very passionate about
Yeah.
some things, and so I won't get too deep into that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you brought up the first do no harm, and I had read something recently that said if you go to your doctor with an issue and he doesn't ask you about your sleep, about your stress,
Yeah.
about your diet, you don't have a doctor. You have a drug dealer.
Well, you were talking about the information that they've been sharing about cholesterol being archaic. And I remember even 5 years ago, before I really dug my heels in and started my own health journey, I had learned about the truth about cholesterol and how sugar really impacts it so much more than fat ever did. And just last year, I was at urgent care with my son, and I could hear in the room next door, the doctor was returning a call to a patient giving blood test results. I probably shouldn't have been able to hear that, but
Yeah,
I could
retrospect.
hear everything the doctor was saying. And I could tell the patient had asked, what to do about it. And the doctor, who, by the way, is a younger doctor, like couldn't have been far out of med school, was telling him the old rhetoric about eat a low fat diet.
Sure.
Yeah, and I just, my heart broke for that patient because he's getting misinformed.
Right.
And he's not going to get the truth. And pretty soon he's going to be on meds and he's going to wonder why nothing he's doing is really working.
Right.
And it's just so sad that myth is still being spread throughout our society when
Yeah.
the truth is out there. And there are several of us out there shouting from the rooftops.
Right.
Maybe if you don't know how to tell necessarily, you go into, so let's say PubMed, and you can search for whatever it is. You could search cholesterol and sugar or cholesterol and fat, and you can take a look at a lot of the different studies. And even if you don't know exactly how to pick out what ones are good science and which ones are weak science, you can eventually learn, and you can go in there and find information yourself. And that's kind of what we have to do now.
Yeah.
You really do, because you have to become your own advocate too, is a huge thing, and so many people need to realize that, because I know, like, when we were starting Joe's health journey and stuff, it can be very, very overwhelming, and so many people, they almost just shut down and go back to their doctor because they're like, I don't even know where to start. So that's why shows like Return to Eden are so important, because they can help you take those baby steps, because sometimes that's all it is. Okay, no more soda, no more
Right.
sweets,
Yeah.
or
It's progress,
cutting
not
down.
perfection.
Exactly. So many people, though, they get so bogged down with, but now I have to go to school to become my own doctor and things.
Right.
It's like, no.
And I'm a
you don't.
parent, and
Exactly.
I have a
How do
full-time
I do all of
job,
this?
and how am I going to balance all of these things when
It's
I
hard,
should
It is hard.
be able to just trust this person
Exactly.
and to tell me the truth, to lead me in the right direction.
Exactly. So becoming your own advocate, though, and your children's own advocate, because we have had to do that for our kids too, and kind of go on our instinct, but then talk to our naturopathic doctors. And we have used Western medicine as well, because sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
They
So
are
it's-
really good at life-saving.
Absolutely.
I will say one thing that I think about a lot is a conversation I had with you actually when I first started working. My daughter at the time was suffering from recurrent UTIs. And I had a lot of anxiety about going to the doctor, and I told you, I expressed that to you, and you said, well, you're her parent. You don't have to give her that medicine. And that was the first time, I know that sounds stupid, but that was the first time in my journey as a parent that it even occurred to me to
That
be
you
like,
could say no?
oh, wait,
Yeah.
I can just say no. I'm her mom. And you're like, and if you don't want to say no, go ahead and go get the prescription or take it and just don't fill it. Like, you don't have to do that.
We've done that. Yeah.
And I think about that a lot when anytime there's a sniffle or, there's something going around at school, I really pull from you as a mother, because it's my job to say no further.
Yes.
This is where the line is, and I'm not going further.
Right.
And since that happened, it's been so transformative. I
Of
mean,
course, now everybody's wondering, what did you do?
well, actually,
You didn't do
this
the-
is going to sound
what?
really cheesy and ridiculous, but what I did is I gave my daughter D-mannose. And every time she starts to show symptoms, I just give her D-mannose, and then she's fine. She hasn't had to be on antibiotics. In fact, my children now, they're almost never sick. And that's something that is extremely valuable when you're solo parenting, is having children who stay healthy and well. And
So D-mannose, people are going to want to know what you're talking about. one of nature's healing sugars.
So
It won't
if
affect your
you-
glucose or your
yes.
insulin like cane sugar will.
If you go to edensessentials.com, we actually do have a cranberry D-mannose product that is gaining popularity. It is something I always keep on my shelf.
Yeah, we do
and
too.
it's not something that I get a lot of pushback from my kids. They're not big into like taking medicine and taking their vitamins and things like that. They have a hard time. I did recently get very ill, and so I had to start boosting their immunity, which is another thing. It's like, okay, well, we're going to make sure that we're really upping our intake of natural vitamin C. We're going to make sure that we're staying very hydrated, that our sleep schedules are on track, that you're consuming zinc. Now they're more used to me being like, okay, come on, it's time, guys. And I don't get a lot of pushback, but I do value you as an influence in that way, because I felt so powerful after that conversation with you.
Well, and that's what we want to do on Return to Eden, is inspire others. Let other moms know, like, hey, there's several of us taking our children's health care to some degree into our own hands and making these choices. My kids have had strep throat in the past, and through my learning and my mentors and my education and research, I found other ways to deal. So we did things like garlic and honey. We gargled and swallowed colloidal silver, things like that. And so I went and I got the prescription for the antibiotics, and I keep them in case of an emergency. But we tried the natural things first. And at least I have that antibiotic, so that it's in the back of my head that if this thing's not getting better with these other things, I have that and I can give that. And I have never had to give it.
And I think it's important to note that plants are not alternative medicine. Like,
That's a good point.
No,
that
that's
is
right.
the first medicine. The alternative are all of these chemicals and
Man-made,
pills and manufactured things that people can financially profit from much more easily than something you can grow in your garden or purchase through someone that you know and trust to provide you with safe holistic supplements.
One of the reasons why medications have so many side effects is because they're usually denied or added to something in their natural native construct that made them what they are. So an example of that is science will take an herb that they know for thousands of years has been really good at reversing something or treating something.
Right.
But they can't patent it.
No.
Right.
because
Yeah.
they
In
can't
order
profit.
to patent it and now make millions and millions and billions of dollars, they have to literally go in at the microscopic level and, let's say, remove a carbon atom or change the
Manipulate it.
construct, manipulate the organic shape that God gave it, so that now they can hold the patent on it. The problem is the way that God designed it, knowing our bodies infinitely
Right.
better than science,
Right.
our bodies are meant to absorb, receive all of the cofactors and constituents that made that
Yeah.
Right.
particular vitamin or nutrient or mineral. When you hybridize it so that you can patent it, there's parts of it. This is very true in hormonal replacement therapy. This is why that's such a hot button. Replacement hormones, they cause cancer. Well, not all of them, but some of them can. Right? And you'll find that the synthetic ones are the ones that are guilty, or the ones where they're using animal urine are guilty because they have to remove certain parts of the construct.
Yeah.
Now your body doesn't view it the same way, and there's parts and bits of it that the body can't do what's called methylate. That's absorb, receive, convert, store, utilize when it's building things like hormones or, antibodies.
Same thing with synthetic vitamins.
Same thing with synthetic. It's exactly right.
Yes.
So under a microscope, they might look similar, but then when you start ingesting them over a decade, you start to see that your body has now developed, let's say, a tumor or something.
Right.
It's in my view, it is my opinion that this, and the consensus of many of the people I know, that it is your body unable to methylate or detox from or finish the cycle of methylation on something. It sort of gave you a bump, or it sort of kind of did something, but now it's got this side effect. Now, what do people take for side effects?
More.
More medicine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is why if you run in a natural or holistic community, they say 5 to 7 years from your first diagnosis before that one gets added to or replaced by your second one.
Yep.
You have 5 to 7 years, because you're not going to get healed through pharmaceuticals. But what you are going to do is ignore the underlying root causes,
Right.
and then eventually your body that is now out of balance is going to say, well, crud, I haven't been able to deal with this. So there's these blind spots in my methylation or my antibodies or whatever it is that can't keep up with this other malevolent thing. So now you need another medication. And you could think of it like this. Every medication is a mama or a daddy. And when you start putting them together, they have offspring.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the little babies have babies, and the babies have cousins, and the cousins get involved. And you got this big, massive series of what is now 5 to 7 medications. And you end up like people that I know that are just, without the grace of God and some miraculous intervention, they have so damaged their ability to methylate. They would have to almost stop all of them.
Right.
Which in some ways now is ill-advised.
Yeah.
Your body is now depending very much for
dependent
life and
on
death
them.
on this crutch.
And what a
Absolutely.
business
That's probably
plan that
also
is.
still contributing to the slow death. But if you pull it cold turkey, you're in dire straits.
Right.
It's entrapment,
Exactly.
in my view. So, in the spirit of being useful today, you've heard us talk a little bit about some of the truths around cholesterol, but I mean, just a little sprinkling. We didn't get into the weeds. You've heard Kendra say something about a D-mannose and a urinary tract infection. So very quickly, D-mannose is one of nature's healing sugars. It does not kill bacteria like E. coli, but most of science agrees that about 97% of urinary tract infections, especially in women, is somehow E. coli has gotten upstream and is now part of their urinary tract. What D-mannose does is it goes in and it coats the layers of the urinary tract so that the E. coli that now would normally binder itself to, let's say, the inside of the bladder and then continue perpetuating bacteria,
Growing,
it can't hold on. It's like, wait a minute, I'm trying to set up shop. Oh! And then through natural hydration,
gets flushed out.
it gets flushed out. It literally can't hang on. So you could think of it like
Slip and
lubing the skids. Yeah, you'll find little bits of D-mannose in something called cranberry. Now, how many of you remember your grandmother saying, drink lots of cranberry
Oh,
juice?
yeah.
She wasn't nuts.
No.
There was something about that. And I don't even know that a lot of them would have been able to explain why or what, but they figured out cranberry juice, tons of it, can help with a urinary tract infection. And by the way, disclaimer, I'm not diagnosing or prescribing. I'm just talking about things that are available in nature, and you should talk to your practitioner about these things.
Or
but
do your own research.
do your own research, be your own advocate. But St. John's wort is also one of those. And by the way, it doesn't play well with antidepressants. It doesn't like a lot of other medications. So St. John's wort is a serious natural intervention. You don't want to take any of these just flippantly.
No.
Which is why we always encourage you to talk to somebody that can help you or do your own research. But St. John's wort is the guy that would then come in maybe and start killing off some of those
of the
difficult
bacteria.
bacterias. And it cares a lot less about what particular strain. It does not like bacteria.
Yeah.
And there's other things you can help with: oregano oil.
Grapefruit seed
Grapefruit seed extract is another really good one. There's a hodgepodge of how many ways do you want to deal with this? It's not It's not that there aren't any options or that you have to go the alternative path.
Right.
They're not taught that.
They're just
I
not
was
taught
never
that.
taught
Right.
that.
I think I had read an article that said it took 2 generations for Americans to lose the ability to heal themselves with food. It's like you discussed our grandmothers telling us about cranberry juice. And like a lot of these things are things that probably, if we think back, we can remember our grandparents or great grandparents.
The kind of people that would have jarred and canned their own
Exactly,
winter
exactly. But we have had those things removed from our educational processes. And for me, and not to get my foil hat out, my question is why? Who benefits? Who benefits from us not knowing how to help our children and help ourselves?
Oh, we know.
And yeah, we know. We're not going to say it, but we know. And so that's where I would start. If you're a parent and you want to have full control of your child's wellness, and you want to teach your child to be able to help your grandchildren, then who benefits? Who benefits from you not having that information, and why?
Yeah.
And they'll get off by saying, oh, well, those folk remedies, those don't work. And then they'll start listing all the legitimately bogus ones. Like nobody is walking around wearing a chicken foot on their neck. That was in folklore and they're supposed to ward off sickness.
Yeah.
Or what were some of the other silly ones? Bloodletting and
Oh my gosh.
tobacco smoke. At one point, certain cultures thought that to heal your respiratory ailment, you inhale tobacco smoke.
Ear infections also. That was a like
To blow tobacco into the ear.
tobacco smoke into the ear.
So clearly-
we're not doing that. We're not advocating.
Clearly, some of those don't work, but many of them that have been passed down for thousands of years, they work.
That's the rationale behind why we have to get modern and go with what the science is telling us now.
Right.
They will point at those examples that you just outlined for everyone as the reasons we can't go back now to what our grandfathers did because they were ignorant, knuckle dragging Neanderthals.
Yeah, just listening to charlatans
Yeah,
who are
yeah,
selling
snake oil, right?
Right.
Off the side of a traveling wagon or something. But quite to the contrary, I'm actually of the persuasion that it's time now to get books that go back at least 50 years on everything from foraging to how to deal with, herbal remedies that you might have locally.
Yeah.
That deal with disease and things. For those that were hearing us talk a little bit about cholesterol, kind of like I did with the D-mannose and the urinary tract infection, if you're concerned about heart health and you're being told your cholesterol is too high, you probably should work with somebody that can help you determine if you're experiencing blockages and things like that. Sometimes blockages, depending on what they're constituted of, whether this is a hard plaque or whether the veins have literally calcified, at that stage, there aren't a lot of options, both natural and or holistic or even pharmaceutical, that are just going to magically go in and repair those veins once they've become calcified. Now, God can do anything he wants to do. I'm talking specifically, it's not something you play around with. Blockages are not something you play around with. Unfortunately, stenting is usually the go-to, which ignores the underlying root cause.
Yeah.
And my biggest grievance with stents is that often doctors will now tell you that things like vitamin K2 that your heart very much needs, salts that your body very much needs, are now prohibited because they coagulate inside of the stent, because the stent is not native to your body. It's a foreign object.
Right.
It's going to be a traffic jam if you're not on things like blood thinners and beta blockers. And we're not going to do a program on this, but people that don't know, in my view, should be talking with people like naturopathic doctors or the people they feel qualified to talk with about trying to get away from some of these medications because of their contributions to things like Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah.
Because of the way they interact with our cholesterol,
Right.
they intercept a lot of healthy fats that are on their way to the brain, the very ones that you need to maintain healthy thought and memory and cognition. So I'm not wanting to fill you with fear and disparage you. I'm just pointing at paths that could bring you to a place for sustained nutrition and maybe freedom from some of those things so that you can get your health and your life back. On cholesterol specifically, I want you to think more about sugar intake. Processed sugars, I want you to avoid them for exactly what they are. They are disease waiting to take place. Now, with the new moving goalposts for cardiovascular expectancy, if you're in your 40s and or older, and you have any concerns at all about longevity and heart health, and you're eating out fast food and you're drinking those big, Turbo Thunder 64-ounce things of soda, you are literally almost assuring that at some point, unless you have amazing genetic robustness that just defies everything, like some of these people that can smoke to 95 years old, and you're like, can I have a little bit of that? Not the smoke, but the genes that let you get away with it. How is this possible? But unless you're one of those anomalies, you're at the very least, and by the way, the 95-year-old could have made it to 110. We don't know.
Yeah. Right.
You are at the very least probably shortening your life expectancy by a ton with the processed sugars. So when you hear the whole cholesterol conversation, I want you to think more about processed sugars damaging the inside of your veins and giving rise to places where now blockages are more likely. And then I want you to think about a couple of things. There is an enzyme that can be taken supplementally called nattokinase. Natto-subtilis var. And there's science on this all day long. You can look this up. But basically what it does is it acts against the buildup of fibrin in your body. It's fibrinogen antiplasmin interactions help you avoid things like blood clots or microclotting, following things like, let's say, a virus that's been very vicious on your body that would have maybe added an over-release of cytokine in your body, which is your body's natural immunity. But if over-responsive, can do damage to your cells and then create microclots. So they help clean up the inside of the veins. Cayenne pepper, black seed oil. Wait a minute, I thought you're not supposed to take seed oils, Jamie.
Oh my goodness, don't get me started.
There are a couple of exceptions. Black seed oil is not vegetable oil. No. When you look at the back of a food, and we'll talk about the bad oils in just a sec, but probably, beets, anything that helps you get nitric oxide inside of the vasculature to deliver nourishment and oxygen. This is where a lot of people will have heart attacks, and the doctors will say, there's a part of the heart at the bottom look different on your test. It's not being nourished. This is the beginning of heart disease. Sometimes that's just because of oxygen deprivation over long, long periods of time.
Right.
So you can stave off, maybe buy time, and even maybe avoid, die of something else after a decade as opposed to, heart disease.
Yeah.
So L-arginine, black seed oil, nattokinase, beets. What else, Jamie?
CoQ10.
Oh, yeah, CoQ10, especially if you're somebody who's on certain medications. Blood thinners. CoQ10 wipes a lot of that out, and that's good for heart and cognition. That's actually one of my go-tos for my DVD, Fight Back Against Alzheimer's.
Well, and if you feel overwhelmed and you're not sure where to start, Jamie and I do put a lot of time into creating these bundles on the website. And the bundles are, of course, to help everyone save a little bit of money, but also to give you a place to start from. Like
Right.
if you're not sure, it's a lot. It's a lot of information. It can feel very daunting and overwhelming. So
Yeah.
we are always happy to have customers call and ask questions. Of course, we're not doctors. We can't diagnose or prescribe, but we're happy to talk through the information, lead you into the direction of some research that can help empower you. And ultimately, the goal is to create strong advocates and for ourselves, for our children, for our parents, to move forward in a way that's educated and thought out, not
Right.
just blindly walking into an office and expecting some miracle pill that's going to fix all of your problems, because that's not how it works.
No, it's not. Well, we are all out of time. Thank you so much for joining us this week in the Simply His Coffee Shop. Be your own health advocate. Advocate for your kids and your entire family. It's so important. We'll see you next time in the Simply His Coffee Shop.